Okay, Madam Mayor, we're now streaming.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to say Happy Christmas to you all to start with, but I would also like to introduce the Reverend Leslie Crawley, who's a Reverend for my electoral patch in Banchotley in Hale, and ask her to lead the council for a moment of reflection.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I'd like to read you 4 verses from the Gospel of Luke. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Saviour has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You'll find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." The first visitors to the stable to meet the baby Jesus were shepherds, and these were the lowest of the low in that society, considered unclean from a religious perspective and not allowed to worship in the temple. But they were allowed and indeed invited to come and worship God in the form of his son, the Messiah. And Jesus later on called himself the Good Shepherd, the one who looked after his flock with incredible compassion and zeal. Jesus was humble. He identified with the poor and the outcast throughout his ministry on earth, transforming those who he encountered. In the nativity scene, we have the shepherds worshipping the boy with the shepherd's heart. I know that everyone who serves on the council also has a shepherd's heart. It is a role that asks for a great deal of sacrifice and perseverance, compassion and humility. It's been particularly demanding throughout the pandemic. It's a role that can transform people's lives. And so, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to pray for you. Lord, we thank you for those serving us on this council today. Give them wisdom and insight, humility and compassion today and in the weeks and months to come. And the blessing. May the joy of the angels, the eagerness of the shepherds, the perseverance of the wise men, the obedience of Joseph and Mary, and the peace of the Christ child be yours this Christmas, and the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen.
Amen.
Informal question time? Right. Informal question time. Are there any informal questions?
There are no informal questions, Madam Mayor.
So welcome members and the public to the council meeting. Members are supported this evening by the Chief Executive, Tom Horwood, Strategic Director, Annie Wrighton, the Head of Policy and Governance, Robin Taylor, the Borough's Solicitor, Daniel Bainbridge, and the Democratic Services Manager, Fiona Cameron. Members, please use the hand raise feature in the Zoom to indicate that you wish to speak. If you lose your connection, please rejoin as quickly as possible. If anyone feels it would help their internet connection to shut off the video, then please do so. If the live stream to YouTube fails, we will pause proceedings to enable the link to be re-established. Before we move to the next item, for practical reasons, I am waiving the council rule 21.1, the requirement for members to stand and speak. Move to apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've received apologies from councillors Chris Howard, George Wilson and Joan Egan.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting, council meeting held on the 20th of October. Members, does anyone have an issue with the accuracy of the minutes? Members, would you unmute your microphone and indicate your agreement to acceptance of the minutes of the meetings held on the 20th of October?
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you. I will sign these later. Have there any declarations? Have there been any declarations prior to the meeting, Mr. Taylor?
None received in advance, Madam Mayor.
Are there any declarations by the members at present? No? Then I'll move straight to the Mayor's announcements. Well, here we are, nearing the end of what has been a hugely difficult year and different year for us all. And I hope you and all your families have kept safe and well. We are extremely fortunate to be ending this year on a positive note, with vaccinations already in progress in Waverley. I am sure we will all take a moment during the Christmas holiday to reflect on the past year and look forward to a time where we can enjoy life all together again. Whilst COVID-19 restrictions have made it difficult to visit events in person, I very much enjoy joining various community groups and events and online, and keeping in touch with staff and fellow councillors in the same way. It has been amazing. It has been amazing to see how adaptable people have been. And such is the desire to keep our spirits up by keeping contact with other people. I'm incredibly proud of all the staff. Everyone has pulled together and adapted quickly to new ways of working. Of course, we are not out of the woods yet, and everyone will continue to support our local communities throughout. So I really hope that the staff have a chance to relax and enjoy Christmas. Remembrance events were very different this year, and due to restrictions at the time, we were unable to come together in numbers to commemorate the very important anniversaries of VE and VJ Day in the way we would have wished. In November, to mark Remembrance Service, the church was able to organise a COVID-19 secure ceremony in Hale for a limited number of local service organisations and veterans, which was recorded and streamed on YouTube. I'm pleased to say that whilst, of course, it was sad not to be able to have our usual full service and parade, I think we all did what we could to enable people to join with us to honour the fallen from the safety of their own homes. I also represented Waverley at a Remembrance Friday event, which was a first for me. It was streamed worldwide to millions. It was arranged by the Pan-African Ahmadiyya Association to honour the Muslim fallen, and it was a great honour to be involved. Normally at this time of the year, I would be extremely busy visiting Christmas events and meeting many of our wonderful volunteers and volunteer organisations. And I'm so sorry to have missed the opportunity to thank them all on your behalf. I would also normally have been meeting you all at the Christmas fair, raising money for my and other charities, and also at the carol service. I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the online version of the latter on Friday at 11. But for those of you who are unable to attend, may I wish you a very merry and jolly careful Christmas and a happier and healthier New Year. And that's the end of my announcements. We move on to the leaders' announcements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unfortunately, I have to start by commenting on the quite sudden increase in infection rates in the southeast, which has seen an emergency decision to move London into Tier 3 ahead of this Thursday's formal review. It appears that my pleas to the Minister to look at Waverley as part of a rural crescent outside of what they now call the London Halo have so far not been successful, and that we will continue to be considered in conjunction with the rest of Surrey and kept in Tier 2. The Council will continue what it can to support our businesses and residents, all of whom have behaved extremely responsibly in this difficult time. Waverley has consistently had the lowest infection rates in Surrey, and I encourage everyone to continue to be vigilant. But I must say a hearty thank you to all our residents and all our businesses for the stern efforts they have made so far to keep Waverley safe. We obviously have concerns over the effects of Brexit, which continues with the ebb and flow of hope and despair, which is most unsettling, but regrettably totally out of our control. Surrey's abortive bid to become a single county unitary and abolish us all caused much unnecessary grief, wasted time and effort. But we will soon be able to publish the KPMG report commissioned by the 11 districts and boroughs, which will exhort us all to closer cooperation. We are taking that very seriously and have open discussions with some of our closest neighbours, in particular Guildford, to see if we can achieve economies of scale and improve services. The main topics for consideration at tonight's council are the medium-term financial plan and the corporate strategy, about which I will comment later. Madam Mayor, that's all I wish to say myself, but with your indulgence, I would like to ask the various portfolio holders to give a quick update on events in their portfolio that are not on tonight's agenda. Is that okay, Madam Mayor?
Yes, it is fine.
Thank you. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Leader. Evening, Madam Mayor. Evening, everybody. I think the medium-term financial plan is going to cover everything I'll say now, so I'll save it till then. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, since the last meeting on the 20th of October, much of my focus has been on the carbon neutrality action plan and moving forward the agenda on the various facets of that, which will be coming up in as part of one of the executive reports today. It incorporates, as colleagues will know, a range of areas, including organisational emissions, active travel and air quality, energy generation, built environment, waste and resources, land use and adaptation, and the development of the green economy in Waverley. We do know that atmospheric CO2 levels far exceed the 350 parts per million deemed a safe level for humanity already, and we need to be part of this global movement to avoid the utterly catastrophic events which will ensue should global temperatures rise by more than the Paris Agreement stated 1.5 degrees above the industrial levels. And so our carbon neutrality action plan is going forward tonight as part of the executive report, as part of our contribution to that. We've declared a climate emergency. This is a critical part of our work in navigating our way forward as a borough.
Councillor Rossman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, Madam Mayor. Good evening and happy Christmas to all. As regards community safety, our Borough Commander, Inspector Sam Adcock, has been meeting regularly with community safety officers, and I can advise that there are now neighbourhood specialist officers in Waverley's 4 towns, major towns, in addition to 2 youth engagement officers and a number of PCSOs across the borough. Your residents may have noticed this. In terms of housing development, after Christmas, work will begin on our new housing strategy in line with the corporate plan. And we're due to be having internal discussions later this week about the Waverley involvement for affordable housing at Dunsfold Park. The homelessness team have continued their amazing support to a number of families in finding emergency accommodation and then moving on. And funding has been secured for 2 one-bed modular construction pods which will now have to go through planning. These are very similar to those that have been very successfully used in Reigate, so you can look on Reigate's website to see more details of what they look like. In terms of housing operations, officers have continued their engagement with residents and tenants in the midst of the pandemic. And in the last quarter, I'm pleased to report that the number of repairs being completed has gone up and the number of voids has gone down. Rent arrears have fallen too and are circa the 1%, which is within our budget target. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, Madam Mayor, and good evening, all councillors. In the planning policy area, there's 2 public consultations currently underway. The first one to complete will be the Chillingfold Neighbourhood Plan consultation prior to its examination, which completes on the 11th of January. We also have the Local Plan Part 2 consultation prior to submission to the Secretary of State for public examination, which completes on 29th of January. Full details of both these consultations are available on the Waverley website. I'd like to also mention that we're starting a project to produce a climate change sustainability supplementary planning document, often referred to as a SPD. Officers are producing a project brief for this project. That refers to this process as being like producing a mini local plan, because an SPD has to go through all the same processes of ONS committee and project planning and finally public consultation. We do have a budget to do this, but we don't, within Graham Parrott's planning policy team, we don't have currently the resources or even the internal expertise to do this. So we will be looking to use outside resources. And for instance, we have discovered that our neighbouring council, Guildford Borough Council, already have an SPD in this area. So Graham Parrott is going to be talking to his opposite number at Guildford to see if there's scope for us using some of their resources. We don't know yet if they'd be interested in doing that, but it might help us and it might reduce external costs in using outside consultants. In the Brightwells area, we had a meeting of the Brightwells Programme Board about 2 weeks ago, and Chris Nicholson are still expressing every confidence that they'll be able to open the Brightwells scheme next July. It's still a point of concern to us and to Chris themselves that they still haven't actually come up with very many more tenants than they had previously at the time of the previous meeting. But they are talking to a great number of people and they're still expressing every confidence that they'll have sufficient tenants to open the scheme next July. It's obviously a difficult time with the COVID situation, and Farnham, actually, as I've said before, has been doing fairly well compared with comparable towns in terms of losing shops and so on. We've been well below average, but unfortunately the COVID situation has made this a bit worse, and we're now up to about the average proportionately to other similar towns, with something like 20 open shops, 20 closed shops rather. So that's a concern in terms of the whole situation in terms of getting extra tenants for Brightwells. Thank you, Leader. That's what I wish to say at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Happy Christmas, everyone. The parking usage has surged as a result of the partial relaxation of lockdown. We have to assume that will fall back in the coming period. And as always, as the leader said, we must urge our friends and families in the community to exercise restraint. We are clearly still in an extremely difficult period. Among the difficulties are also maintaining the services that we're all used to. And I'm pleased to say that so far the enforcement of planning has been achieved at the normal levels. So I'm very grateful to the officers involved, and we hope that it will be possible to continue in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank the Economic Development team for getting the virtual high street up and running throughout the borough. So we now have Click It Local, Waverley. In the last 2 weeks, we've already built up nearly 30 shops and it's growing. And so please do remember, even if you can't get out to the shops, they can now come to you. I'd also like to thank the team for helping to support the setup of the job clubs, the Farnham Job Club and also the Godalming Job Club. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to the dedicated volunteers who are running this and supporting people back into employment in this very challenging time. Our leisure centres have now reopened again, and the leisure team have been working hard to support places for leisure to do this. And we're hoping, based on previous attendance figures, that that prior to lockdown, that the numbers will recover hopefully fairly quickly. I'd also like to make mention to Waverley Training Services, who have continued to support all of their learners without interruption during this pandemic. They are helping people like you may have seen on social media today, Harris, who there was a testimonial, and I'd like to offer him my congratulations in achieving a NVQ level 2 in business administration. And then there was Anita, who completed a level 2 apprenticeship in team leadership, and also one of our new apprentices, Alice, who started last month and is currently undertaking a customer service level 2 qualification. So I don't know whether all members are aware, but Waverley Training Services have 30 years experience of undertaking work-based qualifications and apprenticeships, and we're extremely fortunate to have them within the council and to be able to offer this professional service. I'd also finally like to thank my countryside team who, as you may well know, the numbers to our green spaces exploded during lockdown and have continued to be very, very high. And they've worked really hard to keep all of our green spaces looking fantastic. And that's why people keep coming back, I'm sure. So thank you to all of them as well. Finally, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and obviously best wishes for the new year as well. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick note, discussions concerning the Farnham Museum and Wilmother House are ongoing, and we're now awaiting the Montague Evans report, which I'm told is quite imminent. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors. This evening, I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about cyber security. There's a company in the States called FireEye, and they are one of the world-leading cyber security firms that help protect many government agencies within the United States. And earlier this month, they were attacked by a highly sophisticated state-sponsored attack. The attackers used a new combination of techniques not witnessed by FireEye at any time in the past. It was an attack by a nation with top-tier offensive capabilities who are highly trained in operational security, evidently just as sophisticated, if not more so, than themselves. The attacker gained access and was able to steal the very assessment tools that are used to test their customer security. And just as importantly, a list of the FireEye government customers these tools are used with. This was one of the most extraordinary breaches of security in recent times. But I'm not suggesting for one moment that the next victim of this group of cyber criminals is going to be Waverley Borough Council. But what I am trying to highlight is just how sophisticated these attacks are becoming. From savvy teenagers in their bedrooms to clandestine operations in the heart of the Kremlin, sophisticated hackers are everywhere. 2020 has seen an explosion in cybercrime around the world. with over 36,000 major breaches, exposing 6.5 billion customer data records. Now, popular targets recently have been government departments and local authorities in the UK, who hold large volumes of customer data. Victims such as Hackney, Redcar and Lincolnshire have made the news. But at Waverley, our firewalls and other security measures that we have in place prevent thousands of attempts every single day from accessing our network. So what I would ask this evening is for every one of us to become even more vigilant. And if we spot an email that doesn't seem just quite right, then don't open or save any of the attachments or click on any of the links. Then please forward it and report it to our IT help desk. That's all from me, Leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Follows.
One moment. Thank you, Leader, and good evening, Madam Mayor. I'll speak more on the corporate strategy during that item, but in regards to comms and engagement, team have been very busy keeping residents informed on the latest COVID changes, on an increasing amount of urgent Brexit-related preparation in the event of a no deal, as well as those things that are often really important to residents at this time of year, including waste collection dates. They've also been busy championing the work of volunteer organisations, providing vital support during this time, such as Godalming Villages Community Store and the Elstead Food Bank. The team's also been pretty busy working on the new council website, which will replace our current website early next year, which will help residents better engage with all council services, which I'm sure nearly everybody here would agree has been needed for some time. And finally, if I may just repeat the thanks to the Leader, to our staff for all of their work, and to our residents for all they have done to keep the COVID cases down. Obviously, despite the letter which the Leader and Chief Executive wrote urging some change in the tiering structure, that doesn't seem to be the case this time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your indulgence.
Should we now move to item 6? There are no questions received from members of the public. Item 7, there are no questions received from members. And item 8, there are no motions which have been submitted. So we move to item 9. Leader, would you like to introduce the minutes of the meetings held on the 3rd of November, 20th of November and 1st of December?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be delighted to. I would like to formally propose the minutes of the 3rd November, 20th of November and the 1st December of the Executive be received and noted, and I believe I have a seconder.
Please to second all three, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are 3 Part 1 items for council consideration, which are in the minutes of the 1st of December meeting. I propose, Madam Mayor, with your indulgence, to take them first, as they are the important items for council, and then deal with the Part 2 items of all 3 meetings at the end.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The first item is item 9.1 on your agenda, an update to the General Fund Medium-Term Financial Plan. I do not propose to say very much about this, but I would like to ask the portfolio holder for finance, otherwise known as my Chancellor, to introduce this item. Thank you.
Okay, John. Hello again, everybody. Evening, Madam Mayor again. Just a gentle reminder that this item deals only with our General Revenue Fund and not our council housing activities, which are ring-fenced and funded separately. So the report is on pages 37 to 54 of your packs, but should actually be familiar to most, if not all of you, who've attended one or more of the briefings we've given you, either at the VFMONS in November, the executive itself in December, or the all-member briefing last night. And just to remind you, the first 2 of those are, of course, available on our YouTube channel to watch again at your leisure for all of the insomniacs out there. Right, and just because all of that is there, I'm really just going to focus tonight on the headlines in the report. So COVID-19 hit less than a month after we'd approved our 2020-2024 medium-term financial plan back in February. And at that time, we'd identified budgetary pressures, mainly from cost inflation and the loss of retained business rates, threatening a budget shortfall rising from £1.9 million in this current year to £5.4 million annually by 2023-24. And back then in February, we also identified a suite of compensating measures, both cost-saving measures and income-generating ones, intended to offset those pressures and balance the budget over the four-year horizon. Now, because of COVID in August, we agreed a contingency revised budget to address the additional £6.6 million budget gap we estimated COVID will cause just in this current year. But we then also undertook to review the longer term effect of the pandemic beyond this year, which is the essence of this update report. So this review was conducted prior to and during lockdown 2 and is subject to all of the uncertainties that and the ongoing pandemic entails. It was also conducted while the government's November spending review was being formulated, and we still await key details of what that will mean for us. So subject to all of those uncertainties, you'll find the key assumptions currently adopted throughout the report, but summarized mainly in sections 4.5 to 4.12 on pages 39 to 41 of your packs. So the updated analysis of the budget pressures are listed in the top half of the table in Annex 1 on page 47 of your pack. And on top of those original pressures identified in February, we now face the extended direct consequences of COVID beyond this year, which are detailed in Annex 2 of the report. We've also identified consequential losses from the reduction in interest rates on our Treasury deposits, and we've also recognised the risk of a more sustained shortfall in our non-tax income, which we've quantified for now as equivalent to 8 weeks worth of that income. Now, as you'd expect, timing is an additional factor. These additional pressures are already upon us, if not imminent, and so much more immediate and urgent than those pressures we were considering back in February. Now, together, we estimate that they now add up in total to £3.9 million next year and rise to £4.7 million annually from 2023-24. In terms of the measures we've identified to rebalance the budget, we currently still have the suite that we identified in February, which we are reworking with the goal of increasing and accelerating their impact where possible, while we're also identifying other measures. The measures this far are detailed in the bottom half of the table in Annex 1 of the report and are currently estimated to be worth £0.9 million next year, rising to £3.5 million annually from 2023-24. So net, after these measures, this far, we have still an imbalance in the budget of £3 million next year, albeit falling to £1.2 million annually in 2023-24. Now, as I've said, we live in very, very uncertain times, and we're not just dealing with COVID, but we also have Brexit looming. But we do hope for some better news relating to our funding settlement later this week. Who knows? This could even address the unfairness of our retained business rates arrangements, where the government could resolve our budgetary imbalance in the blink of an eye, just by letting us keep a fraction more of what government makes our businesses already pay. So we will, of course, update members as appropriate in the run-up to the formal budget setting process starting next month. But in the meantime, I would like to thank and pay tribute to the finance team who have been working on this alongside all of the other pressures that they've had to deal with because of COVID, and all credit to them. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ward, are there any other speakers?
I see 3 indicating, Madam Mayor.
Oh, right. Councillor, I think it's Councillor Brian Edmonds.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question, if possible. I would like to know if an equality impact assessment is being carried out as a consequence of the significant number of changes on the budget, so that we can make sure that the burden passes equally across society. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Next one, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd just like to thank Mark and also echo his thanks to the team as well for all their hard work in producing this medium-term financial plan. So to bring this down to a sort of a local level, let's say I have a business in Cranley, small independent business on the high street, and paying over £8,300 in business rates. How can I explain to them that only £415 of their hard-earned cash stays in the local economy and is available to improve that local economy? And also, as I understand it, from that £415 that my resident has to pay, that they're also having to, that money is also going to administer the scheme as well, that we have to collect the business rates as well. So if I'm talking to my resident and trader on the high street, how can I explain where the remainder of that, some 7,800 and something pounds of that money is actually going? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I suppose in a way having to do this budget is almost like dealing with a virus, in that every now and then it changes and we have to adapt our budget to suit the new conditions that have arisen. And I do want to thank both the portfolio holder and also officers for both the number of times and the amount of work they've had to do every single time that they've had to redo this because of the circumstances, but also for the amount of work that they've done in trying to engage with members. I think the portfolio holder has given ample opportunity for members to engage with the detail of this, and I for one have found it very useful, and I know he's offered much more even than that. I have 2 questions. My first question is, during the COVID period, the government have made a number of announcements, many of them relating to how much financial support they're giving to local authorities. And I was just wondering if you could outline to us roughly how much support we have had, and in percentage terms, how much that is in terms of our deficit. As my understanding was that we were promised by government at the beginning of this scenario that we would not be out of pocket. My second question is, how likely do you think as portfolio holder that the government spending review, considering that it has kicked the can down the road in regards to local government reform for at least the last 3 years, and I believe a lot longer, how likely do you believe that there will be some resolution on this particular occasion? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I thought Mark's presentation on Monday was excellent, and obviously there's been a lot of work done by the officers behind that. What I'm not hearing today is any new initiatives for raising new money. I'm not talking about political money, I'm not talking about government money, I'm talking about new initiative and actual activity that the council can generate its own money from. I mean, we buy a few properties, yes, that's one way, but there must be considerable number of areas where we can actually make money ourselves. I mean, there were two I was involved with in the previous administration. One was the garden waste, where we've been incredibly successful, and that actually is bringing in significant revenue from that activity. And the second, of course, was having the second highest sill rate in the country, against, I must admit, the officer's recommendation, but that proved by the inspector. So there are lots of ways in which, if we use our initiative, we can actually make new products and new money. I'm not sure how much we're going to make from the click and collect, or whatever it is, initiative. I mean, there've been no figures of forecasts from Councillor Townsend on the benefit to Waverley of that. Benefit obviously to customers and to businesses, but there's no what is the benefit in financial terms to Waverley Borough Council. So, I mean, this is a very good status report of where we actually are, but it doesn't actually come forward with much initiative. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor, and Merry Christmas to everyone. This item here is a very difficult one. I mean, in respect of what Councillor Adams has said, obviously councils are not entrepreneurial by nature, and we do have to be very careful not to compete with private businesses and put them out of business. And of course, the very first thing that any business is going to rely on and has to establish is to build trust, and that's what we have to do in order to be able to build our finances in the future. I absolutely agree with what's been said by Councillor Townsend and Councillor Follows. It does seem sometimes, I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful, really, I suppose the word I ought to use. It's disgraceful that the government is withdrawing virtually all revenue support from us, from councils. Anyone would think that they are deliberately forcing us into bankruptcy and unitary authorities or whatever, and perhaps actually it's more of an attack on democracy than it is should be seen as a financial attack on us. But that's probably a debate for another place rather than tonight. I mean, for instance, we know now. I mean, I spent years when I was in Swindon advising businesses not to use their cash flow, their VAT receipts, in order to fund their day-to-day business. And you know, we're being put in a position, we learn, that we've now had to do that in order to fund the purchase of a supermarket that's out of borough. And to me, it's using our cash flow is just something we really shouldn't be doing. And I think that we've been put into a terrible position by the government, where we're having to do such things, and you know, and obviously I find it very difficult to support anything like that. But further to what Councillor Adams was saying, I did point out at the 1st of December executive under this item, the medium-term financial plan. I asked whether the executive accepts that Habitat's compliance could save us 1 or 2%, or save taxpayers 1 or 2% on the council tax precept, so it's £100,000 to £200,000 a year. And Councillor MacLeod did very kindly respond, but he said he disagreed. He thought that we'd be worse off financially if we were to comply with the judgment in the ruling in the People Over Wind judgment and the National Planning Policy guidance, which are clear enough. So I did raise this yesterday and was told I could raise it this evening. Can officers please advise how much better off or worse off we'd be if we did apply the need for a detailed, with no lacuna, no gaps, and complete appropriate assessment of the mitigation that we have for the Thames Basin heaths, because you know, we could certainly prevent a few of some cost awards that have gone against us every year over the past few years. And so, can they please tell us how much better off or worse off we would be if we were to comply from now on? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, what we have before us represents very little change for the current year and the revised estimate for the current year from that which we saw in August. And of course, what then goes on in the out years within the medium-term financial plan represents quite a lot of speculation and uncertainty, although, of course, I do understand of the difficulty of providing reasonable estimates in these uncertain times. I guess we need to wait and see. We have the settlement from government coming within the next few days, we hope. We don't really know how quickly things will return to normal. I was pleased to hear from Councillor Palmer that car park income has surged in the last few weeks and is rising quite strongly. Will that need to be built in more quickly than has been assumed in the out years of this medium-term financial plan assessment? I was pleased to hear that the leisure centres are open and doing very well. And again, we don't really know just how quickly they will recover. Councillor Merriweather frequently makes reference to the business rates retention and the fact that the government takes so much away of that from us. I would just say that as long as I've been a councillor here on Waverley Borough Council, and that's now 15 or 16 years, that has always been the situation. There is actually no change in that situation. I know the government has said that they would make changes and they haven't, and that's been pushed out. But the fact of the matter is we've long been a collector of that tax and only a retainer of a very small proportion of it. I think I could nitpick my way through many of the details here, but I won't. I will be voting for the recommendation, although I do note that the recommendation 1 needs the correction of a typo in it. But thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be voting for this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Dear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And for the Christmas card you and Peter were kind enough to send me the other day. I've got an answer, if I may, and a question. And the answer, one of my fellow councillors earlier on was asking how they would explain to their hard-working local shopkeeper that the business rates that they were paying were only in small part returned to the borough itself. Well, the good news that the councillor can give not only that ratepayer, but every other single ratepayer in Cranley, with the possible exception of Sainsbury's, is that the government has given a business rates holiday for a year since last March, a complete free gift, a complete grant to acknowledge the difficulties that people are having to overcome on the high street. So that seems to be a reasonably good answer to give to the traders of whichever particular town the ward member was speaking about. The question, Madam Mayor, is that just like our own dear Waverley Council, Elmbridge Borough Council was taken over at the last election by an unholy alliance of Liberals, their local residents association, and various other people. Elmbridge's administration have just increased parking charges.
Madam Mayor, point of order. I do not wish to be associated with an unholy alliance.
And businesses are struggling to stay afloat. Will our unholy alliance take here this evening the opportunity to confirm that they will not put up parking charges and be able to have that glorious moment recorded on YouTube for posterity? Thank you, Your Honour.
Councillor Dear, could you please not refer to our alliance as unholy? That is probably language we shouldn't be using at the moment. Councillor Mulliner.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much indeed. In fact, I had my point covered by Councillor Martin, so I was not going to take up the time. It gives me a chance to wish you happy Christmas as well, and to everyone else. Thank you.
Councillor Rosamond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Point of order. I think Councillor Dear needs to be reminded of our code of conduct and not using ridiculous statements like unholy alliance. And I really do think there should be an apology.
Councillor Palmer.
In response to the question on parking charges, Councillor Dear may not have noticed that the council has severe financial challenges for reasons outside its control, and it would be irresponsible in the middle of the pandemic for us to make any commitment on parking charges or other opportunities to protect the council and its ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mullen has still got his hand up, but I was going to wrap up and answer the questions if there are no more questions. That's all. That's gone. All right. So if there are no more questions, I'm happy to respond if that's appropriate.
Yes, fine.
All right. Okay. Councillor Redmond, yes, there will be an equality impact assessment. There always is when we do a budget. Councillor Townsend, if my sums are about right, you are, yes, £415 comes to us. About double that, 800 odd, goes to Surrey County Council, and £7,000 goes to central government for whatever central government wants to do with it. And you're right, not only do we collect business rates that are set by central government and send 85% of the money to central government, but we do administer that. And more than that, we are also on the hook for any successful business rate appeals where we are liable for a disproportionate portion of a successful appeal, regardless of whether we've collected the money and sent it off to central government. I'll come back to that when I deal with the pantomime question from Councillor Deere. Councillor Follows, we were promised that we would not be left out of pocket. We were promised several times we wouldn't be left out of pocket at the beginning of COVID. And right now, our best estimate is that, in fact, our government support will be, at best, just over half of our losses, and we will have to find the rest ourselves. And as for the settlement, we believe that the settlement that's coming will just be for another year. So I am not holding my breath for a permanent resolution to the unfair funding arrangements that we suffer. Right, Councillor Adams, thank you very much. Always appreciated some kind words. But yes, this is a status report. We are still in the middle of the pandemic and identifying the problem. There is a whole list of initiatives in the annex that I drew your attention to, and some of those we are re-gearing. But I'm sorry, I have to correct you on SIL, which is not a part of our funding any more than a Section 106 used to be. SIL is a levy that is paid by a developer that goes into a ring fence pot. Wouldn't I like us to get our hands on it? But we can't. And so SIL, I'm afraid, is the reddest of red herrings in this discussion. So we are identifying other opportunities. We are identifying other channels, and it would be fabulous to have an all-out effort, all hands on deck effort to sort this out. So it's particularly disappointing for me to have read the VFM ONS minutes to find out that they thought that this is now a good time to disband the Budget Strategy Working Group, for example, which was tasked several years ago with identifying and driving budget initiatives to deal with the problems that we were already facing, that Councillor Martin alluded to, but I'll come back to that a little bit later on. in the absence of the Budget Strategy Working Group, we have been thinking about other, possibly even better options. Consulting with our residents, one thing the BSWG did do was a fabulous job on budget consultation with our residents, and I've been keen to follow what the climate group, for example, are looking at in terms of citizens' assemblies, what other councils do in terms of participative budgeting, whether we could and should form some kind of a wider group, a focus group, call it what you like, to get our residents engaged in, frankly, what is an issue for them more than us. Councillor Hyman, this is a real shame, because I was so close. I mean, I was nearly 100% agreeing with you until you brought up habitats. I'm just going to pretend to ignore habitats for the time being and say thank you. I agree with everything else that you said. Councillor Martin, yes, in August we talked about this year. We talked about our struggle to balance the books this year. And in August, we promised that we would come back this month in December to report to you the ongoing analysis beyond this year, which is exactly what this report does. Yes, there are steps that need to be taken. I recall quite clearly back in February, I believe you undertook to join us in lobbying government for fairer business rate retention arrangements. I'm sorry that up until now, even knowing that it's been a problem for years, you've not managed to persuade your colleagues in your own party and government to do anything about it. And I would just like to invite you cordially to join us in trying to sort it out. Okay, Councillor Dear, yeah, it's panto season. Yeah, sticks and stones. You know, actually, Councillor Palm has answered your question. As you know, from February, we do not have a blanket car parking charging policy. We deal with car parks according to supply and demand on a very granular level. And despite some of the false propaganda that was sent out by some of our opposition colleagues after the February budget, we did not increase or decrease across the board our car parking charges. We put some up, we put some down, not just for revenue purposes, but to control the spaces, to make sure that people who wanted a space had a better chance of actually finding them, because pre-COVID, the issue was the availability of spaces rather than the pricing. And that wasn't just a guess on our part. We prefer to have evidence, and that was the evidence that was supplied to us by our expert external advisors. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin, I just wanted to remind you also that even though retained business rates is going down, we have also lost our revenue support grant. And I think that was it. Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The typo that was referred to was the year 21/21 in one of the recommendations. Could you confirm that's at 21/22? You hear that? Could you just confirm that in one of the recommendations, the typo referred to was 21/21? Could you just confirm it's 21/22?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Right. Could I ask the leader to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think my Chancellor has done an excellent job in summing up, and dealing with the questions. With your indulgence, I will put the recommendation to the council.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will read it fully for the webcast. The executive recommends that the council, 1, approve the updated forecast and assumptions in the latest medium-term financial plan, and request that a full review of the plan is brought to council in February 2021, alongside the draft 2021/22 budget, and 2, agree that capital receipts are applied to fund business transformation and efficiency projects as allowed under the statutory provisions. And may I please, Madam Mayor, request a recorded vote?
Do you have 5 members to support this?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Agreed.
Supported.
Agreed.
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 Councillor Taylor, could you come on, begin the roll call?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, when I call your name, please say whether you wish to vote for, vote against, or to abstain. Brian Adams.
For.
Christine Baker.
For.
David Beeman.
For.
Roger Blishen.
For.
Peter Clark.
For.
Carol Coburn.
For.
Richard Cole.
For.
Steve Cosser.
For.
Martin Darcy.
For.
Jerome Davidson.
For.
Kevin Denis.
For.
Simon Deere.
Abstain.
Sally Dixon.
Sorry. For, yes, sorry. Okay.
Brian Edmonds.
For.
Patricia Ellis.
For.
David Else.
For.
Jenny Else.
For.
Jan Floyd Douglas has had to leave the meeting. Paul follows.
For.
Mary Forojewski.
For.
Maxine Gale.
For.
Michael Goodridge.
For.
John Gray.
For.
Michaela Gray.
For.
Val Henry.
For.
George Hess.
For.
Daniel Hunt.
For.
Jerry Hyman.
For.
Peter Isherwood.
For.
Jackie Keane.
For.
Robert Knowles. Robert Knowles.
He's left. It may be band problems.
Anna James.
For.
Andy MacLeod. Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Penny Marriott.
For.
Peter Marriott. For. Michaela Martin.
For.
Peter Martin.
For.
Mark Merriweather.
For.
Kika Miralles.
For.
Stephen Mulliner.
Mr. Taylor, it's Councillor Knowles. I lost my video link and was out and I've had to come back, but I would vote for.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Mulliner. Stephen Mulliner, are you on the call? I'll come back to Councillor Mulliner. John Neal.
For.
Peter Nicholson.
For.
Nick Palmer.
4.
Julia Potts.
4.
Ruth Reed.
4.
Paul Rivers.
4.
Penny Rivers.
4.
John Rabini.
4.
Anne-Marie Rosamond.
4.
Trevor Sadler.
Abstain.
Richard Seaborn.
4.
Was that 4, Councillor Seaborn?
Correct, 4.
Thank you. Liz Townsend.
4.
John Ward.
4.
Steve Williams.
4.
Stephen Mulliner, are you on the Zoom call? I don't think so. Okay, so. Right, I'm sorry, Robin, I called you councillor, didn't I? I don't know if that's a demotion or or what. Can I just say it's 44 4?
No, 504.
Oh, 54. 54 4 and 4.
50.
Yes, 50. 54. Oh, 54. I'm sorry. 54 and 4 abstentions. 2 abstentions. Thank you. Sorry, I haven't got it written down in front of me, so yes. Then the recommendations are carried. Right. Now move on to 9.2. Revised corporate strategy. Leader, would you like to introduce the revised corporate strategy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would indeed. Before I open discussions on this document, I would like to propose a small amendment. We had hoped to finally deliver LPP2 by the end of 2021, and we're on course to do so until lockdown descended upon us. Because of that, we have felt compelled to extend the period of public consultation for a period of 9 weeks, which goes through Christmas and New Year. And so I would like to propose an amendment to the last line of the corporate strategy on page 63 of your papers, such that it will now read, I quote, delivering local plan part 2 by February 2022, unquote. I believe I have a seconder.
Please to second, Madam Mayor.
And I hope that council will agree to this without any debate, as it is a thing forced upon us by things out of our control and is not a material factor. So I wonder, Madam Mayor, if you would ask the council if they would be happy to approve that.
Members, could you please unmute your microphone and indicate your agreement to this amendment?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you.
Agreed.
Leader, could you continue?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, councillors. The new corporate strategy, which is before you, has been thoroughly vetted by an ONS committees. And you can see the dates and items discussed on page 56 of your pack. It has also been to some all councillor presentations where we have had some very valuable feedback. We, as I have mentioned, took on board a lot of the scrutiny and the feedback from the all councillors that we received. And as a result, we have completely reformatted this document from its original form. But this has been a torrid year, trying to cope with reduced government funding, whilst putting in efforts to mitigate the climate emergency and trying to second guess the outcome of the Brexit negotiations. And then the disaster of COVID-19 descended upon us. All these are reflected to different degrees in our corporate strategy, and obviously we have tried to make it as firm a document as possible, but there are certain uncertainties which are out with our control. We've stressed our continued commitment to open participative government and building a strong, resilient economy by supporting local businesses and attracting new ventures to the borough. The environment is a high priority, and as you can see, we are looking to increase reuse as well as recycling of items and reducing reliance on burning fossil fuels, both in our buildings and on the roads of our borough. Good quality housing for all income levels is, we feel, a basic right, and we are seeking to build on the firm base which we inherited from our predecessors. The major development at Dunsfold, which has been awarded Garden Village status, will be pushed ahead vigorously, and we will also encourage the Crest Brightwells project to reach a successful conclusion. The health and well-being of our residents remains one of our highest priorities, and we are continuing our support for the NHS in finding and setting up suitable vaccination sites. The pandemic has changed the way we meet and work, and this is reflected throughout our daily lives and is summarised at the end of the strategy. That is all I wish to say by way of introduction, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure there will be the odd comment.
Say it again. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, leaders summarised that very well, and I think what I would say to members is that the core of this is the strategy that we undertook in our first year of administration, and that runs through this. But what we've done as an administration, as we've matured, is try to codify what we specifically want to do and how we're going to get there. And when this is in its final formatted release to council, it will of course have the links to the service plans that you have all in other capacities seen and are fully aware of. I'm very pleased at the way that this went through member briefings and through ONS. I attended every single ONS in that cycle, and some chairs of ONS chose to engage me more directly than others. But I think it was very good discussion, and I certainly made the point to listen to that debate. And although there were ultimately some unresolvable matters that will always naturally exist between administration and opposition, I do think that where we could, we accommodated most of the views that were expressed, certainly in terms of how it was presented, how we worded it, making sure that we actually had a firm vision statement at the beginning. But I do think that the value of this kind of administration is that without one party domination, we are forced to talk to each other and to work together. And this document is the product of that. And as far as I'm concerned, no strategy is ever going to be perfect, and it shouldn't be. And anybody who sits here and says that it is, I wouldn't trust. We should always be trying to exceed our grasp with our ambition. And I think there are places where we do that. And there are places where we will always want to do better. And so I consider this the next evolution in what will, I'm sure, to be will continue to be an evolving piece over our administration and hopefully beyond. So I'm sure the leader and I will both be able to take questions on matters of this as we go. But I heartily commend this to council and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to apologise for my unexpected exit during the vote, which was for, by the way, if you want to add me to the roll. A switch was pressed unexpectedly, but I'm now back, so thank you.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm having difficulty with this. Try as I might in the spirit of Christmas, I'm afraid I still can't consider this a good piece of written English. It was disappointing at the last executive to hear the rather childlike sneering at all things grammatical. Punctuation and grammar, I mean, are not like salt and pepper. You don't scatter them randomly on some bland dish to give it some taste. They're actually a vital ingredient for all good written English, as all effective communicators have known over the generations. Let me just explain. If I were to ask the leader of this council a very simple question, have you eaten Councillor Follows? He would look a little shocked. Well, at least I hope he would look a little shocked, because I would be accusing him of some heinous crime, even worse than wearing those awful ties that he wears at times. But if I were to ask exactly that same question of the deputy leader, have you eaten Councillor Follows? It would actually be seen as a very kind gesture, with perhaps the offer of a sandwich or something more substantial like a Scotch egg. Similarly, were I to tell you that Councillor Jenny Else gets great pleasure from cooking her grandchildren and her dog, you would quite rightly be shocked. But were I to say that Councillor Jenny Else gets great pleasure from cooking her grandchildren and her dog, I would be describing the caring and loving councillor and person that we all know. And this is the difference, isn't it? In speech, we have gesture. I use my hands like mad. I think it comes with being in the classroom. We use our facial expression. And of course, we can use intonation. But in written English, we only have punctuation. There is nothing else that can put the stress, can explain clearly what we're trying to say. Language is power, we all know that, is why human beings dominate the animal kingdom. As Bertrand Russell so nicely put it, however eloquently a dog may bark, he cannot tell you that his parents were poor but honest. Language defines us as a species, and the way we use it in speech and in writing defines us as individuals, but also us as an institution. And we should be striving for the best in all our communications with our residents. And finally, Madam Mayor, could I just offer you one grammatical rule that may come in handy when you're doing all your mayoral thank you letters after Christmas? A double negative is a definite no-no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Councillor Hyman.
Yes, thank you very much. I very much appreciate the changes that have been made to this. There were some comments in the second, well, the first and second, but obviously really only referring to the second round of overview and scrutiny meetings. I think I attended all of those in both rounds, so I did go through it quite well, although less so the second time round, because it really, a lot of it had been sorted out first time. It's now a document which I'm happy to support. Obviously, we're here as councillors, we're here to represent residents. There's always the feeling that actually when residents read anything like this, as I used to before I was a councillor, I did read them, most residents probably don't, but if we read these documents, then it's just words from politicians as far as they're concerned, really, and what they're interested in is about the actions. It's about delivery, and whether or not we demonstrate commitment, or whether we demonstrate hypocrisy, or whether it's just a document that goes into a drawer and gets forgotten about and never sees the light of day again. Is it motherhood and apple pie? Is this a genuine framework? It's up to us to prove it. I think as an administration, as Councillor Follows says, it's not perfect, but I am perfectly happy to support it. I'm happy to support the words that are there. I just hope we mean it and that we demonstrate it with our actions. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Oh, before I go, obviously Councillor Coburn's words in respect of the attention to detail and whatever, I would possibly support, but her insinuations about the leader's waistline and eating Councillor Follows and certainly the rumours about Councillor Else, which I've heard as well, I can't support those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I didn't intend to say anything on this, but it's just a question to the leader from his introduction, if I may, because we have a COVID hub in Hazelmere, a GP hub from another source. I understand probably it's the only one in the Royal Surrey's catchment area. But from other remarks I've had, parking, and I was approached with regard to how they will get some help from the councils. When I asked why they weren't using the edge, it was said, well, they got no cooperation to do so. So I wonder if the leader, from his opening remarks about cooperation, could say, were we approached, and in fact, did we turn down any approach to use the edge, which would seem to have been the perfect place for this kind of operation? It's not criticism, I'm just trying to find out what really happened. Thank you.
Councillor Knowles. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to come back. I'm not going to go into, tirades because it's Christmas, and I will just say I agree with Councillor Hyman completely. It's a very pleasant thing to do, Jerry, but I do agree with you completely tonight. The only thing I would say to Councillor Coburn, other than I'm sure Dan G is getting similar scrutiny of his grammar and spelling as he writes his article on this one tonight, and will probably come to you before he puts it in front of his editor. You have had quite a number of opportunities to talk about this document, and if there were issues like this, I would urge members to flag them up before the meeting, particularly as a chair of Environment ONS, where you've had at least one pass of this. Flag them up beforehand, because if they're basic errors, I mean, I'm just rereading it through. There probably is one, although I would note that in your speech you didn't actually state a specific example. So if you have actually got specific examples, please do send us to them, ideally before these sorts of meetings, and we'll address that. I am hoping that I'm not the last speaker in this debate, because otherwise there's not actually been any debate on the substance. But if I am, I continue to commend this to Council.
There is one more. Councillor Forashevsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and season greetings to everyone. I do appreciate that this is an evolving and a live document, and there is an awful lot of work that still needs to be done. However, I am mindful of the importance of health and well-being of our residents. There's challenging times ahead, and there's a winter that's going to be very, very difficult. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There are policies out there that already exist. On page 64, if we go down 9 ticks, you will see that it says, working closely with health, hospitals and general practitioners, social care and neighbouring councils through the partnership already in existence to achieve a much more joined up approach to the whole of the borough to improve the health and the well-being of our residents. But I would like to see that this document has more meat on the bones, and it has substance and purpose, not just words. And therefore, if we go to the work of the ONS and we look at the meeting on the 17th of November in Executive December the 1st, it does clearly state, and I'm pleased to hear the Deputy Leader and the Leader endorse and say that they are taking into consideration all of these things. And one of the things I would deeply like them to take into consideration, because it is already in existence, it just needs to be adopted, is the consideration of mental health should be made more strongly, including suicide prevention. So, Madam Mayor, thank you for your indulgence, but therefore, if I can have the Executive's reassurance, a sound and purposeful commitment, a follow-up to that joined up thinking that we keep talking about, and put some flesh on the bones and actually make this a strategy that we should and need to be proud of, I would then say I would support the corporate strategy, but I would definitely endorse a lot more work needs to be done, putting meat on the bones, and as said by Councillor Hyman, it needs to deliver, it needs to have substance, it needs to have purpose. It's not just about words, it's about delivering. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Forashevsky. Do I have an, oh yes, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very grateful for Councillor Coburn for the grammar lesson. And yes, I will take up, perhaps if she's got an offer of extra classes, because my commaing is appalling, and I admit it readily. So I will be taking Councillor Coburn up on that. The other thing, though, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, is the question by Councillor Knowles about the vaccination centres. And I just wanted to assure all members that we have worked closely throughout the discussions to find a site for the vaccination sector all around the borough. And as far as I'm aware, we were not asked about the Edge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. I think that's everyone. Leader, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, with pleasure. I'll do this, as they say on the programmes, in no particular order. Councillor Forashevsky, yes, indeed, you do have our commitment that mental health will be a consideration because it is a vastly under-resourced and overlooked problem, which is affecting more and more people, particularly during this pandemic. Councillor Knowles, personally, I cannot give you an assurance which way the Edge went. I think Councillor Townsend has partially answered your question, but I will ensure that you have a proper answer off air, so to speak. Councillor Hyman, thank you very much indeed for your support and your apple pie comment. Councillor Coburn, I thought I'd spend a bit of time on that one. Councillor Coburn and I spent a long time sitting together on the naughty step, so we know each other quite well. And I think this was a rather nice Christmassy, spoofy way of drawing attention to certain grammatical inaccuracies or idiosyncrasies that have crept in. However, should I be as thin-skinned as some of her fellow councillors, I may well be heading for the monitoring officer for her terrible reference to my gorgeous ties. But as it's Christmas, I will let it pass, and I will take on board her comments that there are sometimes things in these reports which grammatically could be improved. And with that, Madam Mayor, I would be delighted with your indulgence to put the recommendation to council.
That's fine.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The recommendation is relatively brief. The Executive recommend the corporate strategy as set out in Annex 1 and as amended at the start of this meeting to the Council for adoption, and I would please like a recorded vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have 5 executive members to support you?
Pleased to support that, Madam Mayor.
I hope so.
Support, Madam Mayor.
Support, Madam Mayor. Happy to support.
Well, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, when I call your name, please say whether you wish to vote for, against, or to abstain. Brian Adams.
Abstain.
Christine Baker.
For.
David Beeman.
For.
Roger Blishan.
For.
Peter Clark.
For.
Carol Coburn.
Abstain.
Richard Cole.
For.
Steve Cosser.
Abstain.
Martin Darcy.
For.
Jerome Davidson.
For.
Kevin Denis.
Abstain.
Simon Deere.
Abstain.
Sally Dixon.
For.
Brian Edmonds.
For.
Tricia Ellis.
Abstain.
David Else.
Abstain.
Jenny Else.
Abstain.
Paul Follows.
For.
Mary Frojewski.
For.
Maxine Gale.
For.
Michael Goodridge.
Abstain.
John Gray.
Abstain.
Michaela Gray.
4.
Val Henry.
Abstain.
George Hess.
4.
Daniel Hunt.
4.
Gary Hyman.
4.
Peter Isherwood.
Abstain.
Jackie King.
4.
Robert Knowles.
Abstain.
Anna James.
Abstain.
Andy MacLeod.
4.
Penny Marriott.
4.
Peter Marriott. 4. Michaela Martin.
4.
Peter Martin.
Abstain.
Mark Merriweather.
4.
Kika Mirrlees.
4.
Stephen Mulliner.
Abstain.
John Neal.
4.
Peter Nicholson.
4.
Nick Palmer. Nick Palmer.
4.
Julia Potts.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Yeah.
Ruth Reid.
4.
Paul Rivers.
4.
Penny Rivers.
4.
John Rubini.
4.
Anne-Marie Rosamond.
4.
Trevor Sadler.
Abstain.
Richard Seaborn.
Abstain.
Liz Townsend.
4.
John Ward.
4.
Steve Williams.
4.
Taylor, would you like to read out the results, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were 34 votes in favour, 0 votes against and 19 abstentions.
Thank you. I think that is carried. As we move on to 9.3, the exclusion of the press and the public.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would certainly request that this item be totally exempt as it deals with contractual matters and things that are potentially legal.
Thank you. I will read the following recommendation. Pursuant to Procedure Rule 20 and in accordance with Section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following matter on this agenda on the grounds that it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during the item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined by Section 1001 of the Act, of the description specified paragraph 4 of the revised Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Members, would you unmute your microphones and indicate your agreement?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, Councillor Potts has been
Agreed.
indicating. Councillor Potts has been indicating from before.
Right, okay. Councillor Potts.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I would just like to put on record my concerns and that of my group, the Conservative group, that all of this item is proposed to be heard in exempt. Whilst I fully appreciate that there are a number of legal sensitivities involved in this matter, and that certain parts of it do need, therefore, to be heard in exempt, I have extreme concerns that we have a matter here that is and has generated a great deal of public interest and concern. And in the interest of openness and transparency, none of it, not even a brief introduction without naming certain parties, is to be held in open and allowed to be debated in open. And I'm afraid that the Conservative group are unable to support the motion that the whole item is therefore heard in exempt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potts. Councillor Cossa.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to support the proposal from Councillor Potts that this should not be supported. The simple point here is that I'm not going to go into the long history of secrecy that surrounds this site and the way it's been handled. But what has happened is we've been left in a situation this evening, quite unacceptably, in which we're compelled to consider completely in confidential a report which, whilst it may well contain details of a legal agreement which need to be kept confidential, also contains details of the background to the matter and how it's been handled, which could and should be subject to public scrutiny. We're not even apparently now allowed to even identify the site that we're discussing. I must ask the council as a whole not to accept this precedent, which is an entirely dangerous one, of shoving anything into confidential completely that doesn't need to be there. This is something that could rebound on any administration at any time, and I would ask the council to introduce an arrangement here that does enable us to debate those bits of this report that absolutely are not confidential and should be in the public arena. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Noted, Councillor. I have Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to draw the Council's attention to the fact that it would be illogical, in my opinion, for the same topic to be discussed at another meeting, partially in open and partially in exempt, and then at another meeting completely in exempt. And yet that is what is being proposed here. I simply say that if it was proper to divide the matter into open and exempt last time, why not this time? Thank you.
Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we expected, there would be some grandstanding because, once again, the opposition know that we aren't able to respond fully because we would, of course, be referring to exempt papers. The previous time that this came up in council, it was partly in exempt and partly in the open because the nature of the papers allowed us to split that up. And where possible, the administration always tries to do that. Now, those councillors that have read the papers will know that the matter under question here, because of the nature of it, entirely has to be in exempt. And as a result, this section is proposed to be entirely in exempt so that we meet the terms of that exemption. So this is exactly why this has been brought in this way. And I am sure those councillors that have read the papers understand that. And that is why the Mayor was trying to take the matter into exempt, because the whole of the papers are in exempt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. I think in this circuit, oh no, wait a minute, we have some more. We have Councillor Coburn.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree totally with Councillor Potts and Councillor Cotter on this one. When I was Mayor sitting in your chair, we had many exempt items. And as long as we didn't stray into those, we had pink papers, but we still held them in public, but made sure that we didn't actually then stray into the areas of confidentiality. It is perfectly possible when well chaired. And in fact, there was one hilarious meeting when Robin Taylor's predecessor, Robin Pellow, thought it was going to be the first time that the Mayor collapsed in laughter at a mayoral meeting, because Councillor Webster, I can see him so well, those of you who know him in Hayesmere, was up and down like a yo-yo trying to work out whether or not he could say what he wanted to say. But the point was that the public could see this. And although I kept him in check, as did the officers, we still had all the pink papers. We debated it in public, but we were just very sure that we kept the really sensitive issues in confidential. And I am really opposed to this idea of the whole matter on any issue being discussed in confidential unless it is really necessary. And I really don't think it is in this case. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Rosamond.
It is vital for legal reasons that this does not become something within the public domain. It would be, we are protecting the council's position here. We're not going against public interest. If we get into exempt, we discuss it, then the information will be within the public domain. Having listened to in the executive comments that were made in exempt, I was horrified, to be honest. We are subject to a confidentiality agreement, therefore we cannot deal with this in the public domain. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say before the last two speakers that I am minded to put this to the vote. Do the other two speakers wish to make a point of order? Do they wish to carry on? Councillor Hyman?
Yes, thanks. I mean, I thought it was fairly straightforward that we were subject to a confidentiality clause, and that is that, and Councillor Rosamond has kindly agreed that. But I just thought if Councillor Molyneux, perhaps, or Councillor Potts can identify specifically a section which they think they should be able to speak to, and only that section, perhaps we should consider that, to be fair, because we don't want to be criticised for being. I mean, obviously, at the end of this, there's things that say equality, diversity, and inclusion, climate emergency declaration, consultation, engagement, other options, and all those sorts of things, which could be an open but would be absolutely pointless because the public wouldn't want even to see them anyway. But if there's something, I'd be willing to listen to it because we do need to take a vote on it. And I think other members would, because we don't want to be seen to be unfair. But this is if it's simply Christmas grandstanding, which they're entitled to do, it is a political forum, the council meeting. Then I'd go straight to the vote. So whether Councillor Muller can identify a specific area that they do wish to speak to, which we can have a very quick look at and see. But otherwise, Madam Mayor, I think we should go to the vote.
Right. I think that Councillor Gray, are you happy to withdraw?
No, if I could just make a couple of comments. I mean, I think it's slightly disingenuous of the deputy leader to turn around and talk about grandstanding. It's grandstanding because we put it forward. When he puts it forward, it's a good point. I mean, we're talking here about transparency. We're talking here about the members of the public seeing us going straight into exempt without even an explanation of what the subject is. I do object to a whole subject going into object. What is it we're going into exempt for? It's a matter. And this leadership, this current executive should be prepared to make a statement to justify what's going to be discussed without necessarily going into the legals or going into confidential matters. It's not beyond the wit of man to come up with some form of explanation which would meet their pledge for transparency.
Point of personal explanation, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the point here has been very well defined by Councillor Rosamond. The reason why this needs to go into exempt has been very clear, because it's subject to a confidentiality agreement. Now, my personal opinion here is not about causing the council to go into exempt for no reason. It is also about not only adhering to the confidentiality clause, which everybody who's read the papers will know is the reason why we're moving to exempt, but is also because we do not wish the opposition to continue to spread misinformation on this subject in the full knowledge that we are not able to respond because of the legal prohibitions. Now, our main interest here is to protect the interests of the people of Waverley and this council. And as such, we're adhering to the legal obligations which we have to abide by, which is why this entire matter is an exempt. Something which I am sure Councillors Gray and Potts and everyone else who has spoken against this, they have either not read their papers or they're trying to present false information to people of Waverley, which again is wrong. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, can I come back with a point of order? I actually don't consider the deputy leader's point of order anyway, but I do resent the accusations that he's made. They're very personal accusations about some people wanting to mislead and spread misleading information. I think he should withdraw that comment.
Councillor Gray, I can supply at least one example now, if that would be. Councillor Goodridge repeated on several occasions a matter that I can send you by email afterwards that we have on the record refuted now 3 times, and he said it again in public last time. So, I mean, we can present other options if you like, but I'm not going to withdraw that because there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to go on any further, but I do resent that comment and the way it's been picked up by the deputy leader, and I don't think it does him any credit in this position. Thank you.
Right, I will stand at this point, and you will be muted. I think that very little will be gained by carrying on in this way, and I think we should move to the vote. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, could we have a recorded vote?
Yes, you will. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, when I call your name, please indicate whether you wish to vote.
Points of order, Madam Mayor. There's been no vote for that recorded vote.
We're moving to a vote on the.
Madam Mayor, I'm sure that those who wish for a recorded vote could raise their hands in the way that we normally do.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. And I will go for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, can I actually ask what the vote is for? Is it for it all to be an exempt? We need clarity. Thank you.
Yes, it's for the council to move the whole thing into exempt.
Further point of order, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure whether the council is acting within its powers to determine whether it can vote to override a freely entered into legal obligation for confidentiality in this case. Could you explain how we're able to do that, please?
Just hold on.
Device for moving on, Councillor Follows. I presume we actually wish to debate this in exempt. Right, thank you. Can we have a recorded vote? Those of you who wish me to move this into exempt with no exceptions, could you vote for or against the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Councillor
Madam Mayor, on a point of order, I don't think this is what we're trying to do. We've objected to the whole thing being an exempt. Not parts of it have to be.
No.
Madam Mayor, could I suggest that we go ahead with the vote? If it's defeated, then I'm sure that we can put another amendment. We can put another proposition up that we should have a debate of what we can debate in open, and then after that we will go into exempt.
Absolutely.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Where are our legal officers? Can we have some legal advice on this from our officers as to whether we can vote? I would hate to go through the whole process of voting to find that it's invalid. Do we have any legal officers with us to give us advice?
Yes, we do. Councillor Bainbridge? Councillor, Mr. Daniel Bainbridge.
Councillors, it is rare that we ask you as officers to consider something entirely in exempt. These papers are entirely on pink, and the recommendation from officers is that you should debate everything in exempt, just as the executive did when they met to consider this item. It's open to the mayor to decide whether to have a recorded vote on the motion to go into exempt, and that is what she has suggested. That is entirely within the Constitution. I would stress that this is not the first time that council or a committee of the council has been asked to consider something entirely in exempt, or that it would have done so. And there are very, very good legal reasons why at this stage of proceedings that should happen. So I can't ask you to vote a particular way, but I can only say what I've just said. There will come a point in the future, probably in the not too distant future, when you will be able to, as councillors, say things in public about this matter. And of course, we will advise you as officers to what those things will be. But I do urge you very strongly to consider the recommendation that we've made as officers for this matter to be retained and exempt. I cannot stress more strongly the risk to the council if the contents of the report were discussed, or parts of it were discussed in open session.
Mr. Bainbridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Did everybody hear that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we now go to a recorded vote on 9.3, the motion to exclude the press and public. When I call your name, please say whether you wish to vote for, vote against, or to abstain. Brian Adams. Brian Adams.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Against.
Christine Baker.
For.
David Beeman.
For.
Roger Blishen.
For.
Peter Clark.
For.
Carol Coburn.
Against.
Richard Cole.
For.
Steve Cotter.
Against.
Martin Darcy.
For.
Jerome Davidson.
For.
Kevin Denis.
Against.
Simon Deere.
Yeah, I vote against.
Sally Dixon.
For.
Brian Edmonds.
For.
Patricia Ellis.
Against.
David Else.
Against.
Jenny Else.
Against.
Paul Follows.
For.
Mary Forojewski.
Oh, I don't know. Based on the legal advice, regrettably, I don't want any of these in exempt, but I have to appreciate the legal advice from Bainbridge. So with great regret, for.
Maxine Gale.
For.
Michael Goodridge.
Against.
John Gray.
Just following on from Mary Forojewski, we're not saying that we want any of this in. We want to have part of it in, part of it out.
Point of order, this is a vote, not a speech.
I'm not giving a speech, I'm putting a point of clarification, Mr. Deputy Leader.
Is that an against?
No, I don't know. What is the vote?
It is against.
Against.
Okay, John Gray, I've marked you as against. Michaela Gray.
For.
Val Henry.
Against.
George Hess.
I'm for. Getting on with it.
Daniel Hunt.
For.
Jerry Hyman.
For.
Peter Isherwood.
Against.
Jackie Keane.
For.
Robert Knowles.
Against.
Anna James. Anna James.
Against.
Andy MacLeod.
For.
Penny Marriott.
For.
Peter Marriott.
For.
Michaela Martin.
For.
Peter Martin.
Against.
Mark Merriweather.
For.
Kika Mirrlees.
For.
Stephen Mulliner.
Against.
John Neal.
For.
Peter Nicholson.
For.
Nick Palmer.
For.
Julia Potts.
Against.
Ruth Reid.
For.
Paul Rivers.
For.
Penny Rivers.
4.
John Rabini.
4.
Anne-Marie Rosamond.
4.
Trevor Sadler.
Against.
Richard Seaborn.
Against.
Liz Townsend.
4.
John Ward.
Apologies, muted. 4.
Steve Williams.
4.
Oh, she's a beautiful girl. How beautiful she is. Right. Mr. Taylor, would you like to read the results?
There were 34 votes for, 19 votes against, and no abstentions.
Thank you. I think we will now move into exempt session, and given the time, I would like to offer members a 5-minute comfort break.
Thank you.
Before moving into exempt.
Agreed.